Extending the growing season is glorious, but what really are the limitations for northern climates? I've covered a lot about maintaining temperatures to enable growing, but at some point, lack of heat is no longer the limiting factor. I'm going to delve into the next greatest limitation: sunlight for photosynthesis. For my region, in eastern South Dakota, in the United States, we hit a crop production limitation caused by too short of day length, or insufficient light. Eliot Coleman popularized a name for this period of the year when the day length falls below 10 hours. He calls it the Persephone Period, after the Greek myth explaining the reason for winter time. For my location, that book ends November 3rd and ends February 7th. Now, a rule of thumb so simple may be an oversimplification, so let's dig a little bit deeper. Characterizing light energy is complex, with many confusing related units of measure. On the left are the common radiometric units of light that quantify the amount of energy that is in light. First, radiant power is the total amount of light energy coming out of a light source in all directions. Radiant intensity is the amount of light coming out in a particular direction. And irradiance is the amount of light falling onto a surface. Here we can see the spectrum of light that is included in these measurements, of which only a small part we can see. Now that's cool, but plants can't eat every wavelength or color of light. They can only eat light between 400 and 700 nanometers, and not every color equally within that range. So we apply a weighting of importance to those colors to get the photosynthetic photon flux, or PPF. This metric can be used to quantify the output of grow lights. But what we are really interested in is the amount of usable light falling on our plants, photosynthetic flux density, or PPFD, sometimes called PAR. Now, if we summed up the total PPFD over the day, we get DLI, or daylight integral. We really want to know how much total light our plants are getting per day to know if they can be productive within our growing season. So, of course, I measured it. First, let's look at what's happening outside. Our summertime light levels are quite high due to our day length, sometimes reaching as high as 60, but averaging closer to 45 to 50. But by December and January, we are sitting in an average between 5 and 10. Well, what are 2 layers of film going to do to that? Yikes. These are the values I measured in my high tunnel. The film is 2 years old, so not new, but easily within the intended lifetime that most growers expect. The data was between 40 and 60% of the outdoor light levels. What's going on here? All right, let's look at the specs for this film. The standard 6mm polyethylene film, 91% transmission, that sounds like a big number, and 20% diffuse transmission. Okay, great. These are measured with the light hitting the film at 90 degrees. We lose 9% to reflection or absorption, and 71% continues in a straight path, and 20% goes all wacky at other angles. Then it goes through another layer, and we take another hit, which ends up putting us at 73% total. In a perfect world with no dirt, new film, no fog on the film, and perfectly straight on sun. Unfortunately, the sun is never really at that angle for very long in the day. So how much does changing the sun's angle decrease it? Let's calculate that quick, assuming a single layer and we know the refractive index. I don't want to do the math for 2 layers, so we're just going to look at one. Oh shoot, past 50 degrees it drops off really fast. Well, that explains why film transmission matters a lot. Anyway, I thought we were talking about growing stuff and not physics. All right, back to our high tunnel DLI data. How much light do we even need to grow tasty fruits and veggies? Let's start off with very high light crops, like squash, eggplants, okra, or corn. They need levels greater than 30. No wonder they love our long days in northern climates. For highlight crops, we have tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, beans, melons. These values are for the fruit production stage. April through October are excellent. Moderate light crops aren't quite as greedy. Many cool season or partial sun crops thrive with this amount of light, such as peas, strawberries, bush beans. Now, these low light crops start to shine, like bok choy, lettuces, spinach, kale, parsley, peas, and cilantro. As we get to the very low light region of 5 to 10, many of the options are the same, but yields will be much less. As we get to averages below 5, vegetative growth pretty much stops for all plants. Even the lowest light crops fail to be able to produce enough energy to maintain respiration below a DLI of 3. I've noticed that growth pretty much stalls from mid-November through January for most of my plants. But once February hits, growth changes rapidly. So what if you don't live in South Dakota? How do other places compare? Your actual amount of daylight depends on your day length and the number of cloudy days that you have. In an outdoor scenario, it ranges from 5 to 10 up where I live to 20-ish in the southwest United States. But what about in our high tunnels? Of course, it only goes down further, unfortunately. See if you can find your location on this map to see how much it drops in December. I'm sitting at about 5. Now, let's look at some specific crop needs and the potential growing season without supplemental light. Here we have across the top the months of the year and the range of dates when our light levels in my high tunnel are sufficient for vegetative growth. Interestingly, I really don't have enough light until mid-February for even the lowest light crops. Many of the leafy greens are some of the most low light tolerant options feasible, starting in March. By April, we have enough light for almost everything. As you can see, active growth and crop production isn't feasible year-round, no matter how warm I can keep crops in the high tunnel. Usually I see highlight crops, like peppers and tomatoes, lingering into December, but by then they are pretty much stopped ripening altogether. For leafy greens, if you get them growing enough before December hits, they will stay alive and they can be harvested throughout the winter as long as you don't go below the temperatures that kills them off. A lot of times, many of them are hardy down to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Look into that for the specific crops you're interested in. And of course, there might be reasons to not let things get down to our outdoor temperatures of negative 25 in the winter, such as the overwintering of some types of plants. I have some figs and pomegranates, and they're hardy down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So some level of heat storage through the concrete blocks or maybe a climate battery can keep you above those temperatures and allow you to overwinter plants that you may not be able to overwinter outside. This video was funded in part by USDA's South Dakota Specialty Crop Block Grant. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and share it with your friends. I'd also love to know your thoughts. Comment down below and let's chat. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more content like this.